pressed the let's go live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. We had some technical difficulties this morning. Hopefully those have been worked out and the tubes connect themselves. It looks like the tubes are connecting themselves, which is great news. Are we working over on YouTube and the Rumbles and all across the fruited plain of the internet? It does look like we are working, which is tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today, my friends, the big news is footage is going to be released. And we've been salivating over this footage for quite some time. We're talking about the 41,000, give or take, a couple thousand here or there, hours of January 6 footage that is going to be delivered courtesy of our newly elected Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, to our friend Tucker Carlson. And he's going to be very excited about this, you can imagine. I'm pretty excited about it, looking forward to seeing what's on some of these videotapes. But we're going to go through that story today because there was a great thread that I thought was appropriate to get to today. We've got a lot. We're going to go through the Axios Exclusive. We've got an understanding about why this stuff was so buried in the first place. We're going to check in with Julie Kelly. She's done great work on this. We've got a lot of reaction from some people like Ron Filikowski, who is on Twitter, and he's saying, I guess we all have to watch Tucker now if we want access to the January 6 documents, even though he's sort of forgetting that Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the House very recently, and the Democrats had the entire January 6 Select Committee. All right, we'll save it for that. We'll also go through this interesting clip from a very great follow on Twitter. His name is @FreeStateWill, and I'd invite you to go follow him because he's been doing some very good stuff on Twitter as it pertains to January 6th. And we're asking ourselves all sorts of fun questions about this because the government, the DOJ, they had kept all this stuff under wraps, that 41,000 hours. Oh, it's national security. We can't share it with you because you're a defendant. You don't need it and all this stuff. Same type of crap we hear in criminal defense law all the time. It's nonsense. Well, you don't need access to, all of these records because your client was only traveling from this area from this time to this time. And we say, yeah, we're not looking for our client's information. We're looking for your officer's malfeasance. You understand that? But the courts will say, well, all of that officer's malfeasance isn't evidence in this case, and so we can't expand the scope just to put you on a fishing expedition, blah, 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 blah. Well, the point is, the DOJ has been playing that game for a long time. We've been disgusted by it because this has been really, I think, blown entirely out of proportion. But we're going to talk about this gentleman right here. You see his name is William Pope, and he is a J6 defendant who is representing himself, or at least filed this motion himself, and he is fighting for discovery. And now that Kevin McCarthy is releasing all of this stuff over to Tucker Carlson, and what we'll see is, I would expect a lot of this stuff to trickle out to the public sort of simultaneously to it. It sort of shatters the argument that the DOJ needs to keep it quiet. So we have William Pope, who filed a very interesting motion responding to the government's response. The government says, you can't have all of this stuff. And William Pope responded, and he put together a very interesting timeline and a flipbook, which is showing us Ray Epps shoving a sign into the police, which I thought he didn't do. I thought he was very peaceful. So we'll go through there. A great story from the Epoch Times and his motion, from William Pope's motion that he drafted himself and sent in, showing that there were undercover cops all over the place, right? They were in red hats and white beanies. They were being stopped by other cops as undercover cops. They looked like undercover cops. And, they were instigating stuff all over the place. In my humble opinion, we'll see what the evidence shows, but it's looking like that through and through. So that'll be in the second segment. A little bit of a J6 case deep dive with William Pope, a J6 defendant. And then we'll turn our attention over to something that dropped over on the weekend, which was Twitter Files 16. Our friend Matt Taibbi dropped these, and they're interesting. They are actually talking about a Republican. This Republican here was also asking the government to censor his enemies. And so it really talks about the media and the continual censorship. Matt Taibbi did a great job on the Twitter Files. And also our friend Undead FOIA, who's another good Twitter follow, has had his ups and downs with the Twitter censorship game for a long time. And he posted another thread and he said, all of these people that were listed in the Twitter files are not Russian bots. Okay. He's like, I know these people. Okay. Personally, they're not Russian. This is all nuts. And so he's saying these are good American citizens who are being censored. So he's sort of vouching and corroborating everything that Matt Taibbi put in here. And Matt Taibbi, if you don't stick around for this segment, he is asking people to contact him, right? So if you have been on one of these mailing lists, if you have been somebody who's been the subject of being censored by these censorious goons, well, he wants to hear from you. So you can check him out at racketnews@protonmail.com if you're out there listening or you know somebody who may have been impacted by this garbage. So we're going to go through all of that and more, my friends. And as you can see, there is a lot to get to today. And so if you want to be a part of the program, the best place to do that is by heading over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I'm excited to announce that we are launching our new, it's not launching, it's coming next week or so. We're beta testing still. And we finally are working on our community chat that is persistent. And so if you join now at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, you are going to be grandfathered into this new thing where we're beta testing it. So now's a great time to join. But if not, well, there's going to be paywalls for both locals and for the new website. So now's a good time. If you're on watchingthewatchers.locals.com, you'll get grandfathered into the new stuff. Good time to join up. Also, before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the program, want to shout out our sponsors, of course, our friends over at fieldofgreens.com. That's where you can use code Robert to save 15% off when you order your real organic superfood. This stuff is going to make you feel great. It's going to help you lose weight. It's going to give you that daily serving requirements for your fruits, your vegetables. It's all organic. It really is superfood. I've got it right here. We've gone through the ingredients. I'm not going to do it now. But when you look at a menu and you're like, that looks really good, I probably shouldn't eat that. You look at the other item, you're like, yeah, that looks kind of like I probably should eat that. It's got all that stuff in it, okay, like broccoli and beets and all of the other stuff. And you can check it out at fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert. It tastes good going down, and it's going to make you feel vibrant and just bursting with vibrance. And so check them out. Also, want to shout out my former law firm, the R&R Law Group. Of course, I'm no longer at the R&R Law Group. However, they still are the R&R Law Group, and they're still killing it in court. They're just slam dunks every day. And so check them out at 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. If you know anybody in the state of Arizona who has been charged with a crime, they can help. All right. And so without any further ado, my friends, let's get right into it on the day. And shout out to our friend John McGarvey, who is on YouTube and who just we got 10 new members coming over on our YouTube membership. Thank you, John McGarvey. It's so generous of you. 10 members. Woo! And we do member-only streams. So this morning we had a member-only headline stream. So if you're a member on Locals or if you're a member on YouTube, you get all of that stuff. And also, if you join as a member on YouTube, you also get access, I'll also grandfather you in over on our new website. So thank you so much, John McGarvey, for that. Big welcomes. Gypsy Moon, Kelly, we got Maddie Adams. Adam M is here. George Bonnie. DeFreak is in the house. Perfect. The Globuditskis are here. C. John, Blue Phillips, John DeLuca, T. Oliver, and others. Thank you, John. All right. And so now, my friends, let's get right into it. And I was very happy with myself with this Tucker GIF that I screen grabbed today. I'm pretty happy with it. It's pretty good, right? We'll get there. There's more to come. All right. Tucker Carlson gets the January 6th footage, and we're pretty excited about it. We've been wanting to see this footage for quite some time, and there's a lot to rummage around through, something like 41,000 hours. A lot of this footage would have been very useful for January 6th defendants, many of whom already took plea deals or have already been convicted of crimes. Not ideal for them to suddenly look backwards on the discovery and potentially see exculpatory evidence or materials that would exonerate them, or at least show that the government may have been a little bit less forthcoming about their, active involvement in instigating some of the activities on January 6th. But Tucker is going to go through this, and we're excited to watch what he does. Of course, there are some criticisms being lobbed his way, which, all right, some people are saying, well, if he's going to get all the footage, why don't they just release it all to everybody, and so on and so forth. And I'm of the mindset, we'll let Tucker go through it. I fully trust his team. I think they're going to slam dunk it, if I can be perfectly honest. If there's anybody in this country capable of going through it and hitting a home run on this, it's Tucker. And that's why so many people are upset about it. We'll get to that in a minute. It's from Ron Filipowski and others on Twitter who are basically reeing at the sky because they know that when Tucker and his team get done with this, it's not going to look so good for them. And I will suspect that a lot of this footage, after it goes through Tucker and after a lot of this stuff is sort of compiled, that we'll see the rest of it and then the internet will go hog wild over it. But before we dive into what might be in this footage, let's take a look at the exclusive, which is reported over from Axios. And here's what they tell us. Exclusive. McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker of the House, who is really over-delivering, I'll say. He's doing a pretty outstanding job so far. He gives Tucker Carlson access to the trove of the January 6 riot tape. Well, they're not calling it an insurrection anymore. That's good. This was published over from Mike Allen. He tells us, Kevin McCarthy, new Speaker of the House, has given Tucker Carlson access to 41,000 hours of Capitol surveillance footage from J6 riots, according to a McCarthy source. So it's McCarthy sources telling this news reporter, which means that's probably pretty true, right? Carlson TV producers were on Capitol Hill last week to begin digging through the trove, which includes multiple camera angles from all over the Capitol grounds. Excerpts will begin airing in the coming weeks. Now, I can't wait for this. Now, for those of you who may have not joined us through all of the January 6th litany of nonsense that we've talked about here, we've covered a lot of the different camera angles. We've asked ourselves many times why Ray Epps was where he was. We had questions about why cops were being tapped on the shoulders and, oh, let him in, let him in. And then people just walked right into the Capitol. There was no insurrection at all. We played clips of grandma walking around. We've played clips of all the different angles and what looks like officers who were actively instigating and involved in this so-called insurrection. And so now all of this is going to be coming out. We're going to be actually able to assemble this. I'm looking forward to it. Why does it matter? Well, Carlson has repeatedly questioned official counts of 1-6, downplaying the insurrection as vandalism. Well, was it insurrection? Was there an insurrection? Has anybody been charged with insurrection yet or anything like that? Were there weapons there to insurrect the country? No. It was more analogous to vandalism than it was insurrection. So Tucker Carlson, he's got Tucker Carlson Today, massive show, and now he's got a massive trove of raw material. Carlson apparently responded to Axios, says there was never any legitimate reason for this footage to remain secret. Absolutely true. You know, I could think about maybe some footage that shows the secret doorway that the Secret Service agents pop out of and protect everybody or something like that, right? If there's something that compromises building security or building integrity and all of that stuff, okay, you can at least make the argument for it. We put the hat on the other foot and we say, all right, let's look at it in a light most favorable to the U.S. government. I know how sick that might make you, but let's give them the benefit of every doubt. Why might they want to keep the footage secret? Well, you know, maybe there's a security concern. Maybe there's, some sort of information that they don't want leaking out that would be in the video, right? It's Congress people doing something or saying something, some of that stuff. Okay, you could redact it or you could just leave those bits out, but release the rest of it. Okay, so of the 41,000 hours, how much are you going to redact? I don't know, 1,000 hours of that? Give us the other 40. That would be reasonable, but not to just withhold the whole 41,000. That's ridiculous. So Tucker says, if there was ever a question that's in the public's interest to know, it's what happened on January 6th. Says, by definition, this video is going to reveal it. It's impossible for me to understand why an honest person would be bothered by that. You know, Tucker, excellent point. I don't understand it either. Why don't they want to show us it, right? If it really is so bad, I mean, if it really is this massive insurrection, wouldn't the Democrats be the first people to deliver this on a platter? I mean, they played the clipped footage on repeat 24/7 every day on CNN, insurrecting America. How many people died, you know? And it was a nonstop show, like a circus almost. Still is. They're still running this thing. So why don't they want us to see all of the rest of it? Put it on 24/7, put it on CNN, stream it nonstop, let us see it. Unless maybe it's not as bad and they just selected the worst of it to try to craft a narrative. Now, they're giving us a reality check. Now, they say they played numerous excerpts of the footage last year at their captivating hearings. If you say so, they got no ratings and they all just sort of puttered out. There was not even a big climactic event at the end of it. It was just like, oh, we had Clavicle Girl. I think she was the star of the show. Were they really captivating? I'm not so sure about that. But I guess for these people, maybe it was. We were covering them and we just tuned out because it was the same thing. They weren't even adversarial. There wasn't even the ability for the opposite side to ask questions. Okay. It was 7 Democrats. And then you had Democrat light Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger up there. That's it. It wasn't even an adversarial process. So it wasn't captivating. It was like a book report, like an 8th grader. So insurrection. It was the dumbest thing we've ever seen. And they beat themselves up into, a pretzel to try to make it turn into something, and it never did. But they enjoyed it over at Axios, this guy. Between the lines, the process with Carlson started in early February, which is great, according to a communication between McCarthy. It was previously reported that it was 14,000 hours. I'm told it's now much more. Perfect. McCarthy told reporters in Statuary Hall last month that he thinks the American people should see exactly what's going on. Yeah, because we have questions about it. I mean, didn't the government fail one way or the other? They either failed to plan, or they failed to protect, or they were complicit. I mean, I really have a hard time thinking what else happened, because if you look this up by the numbers, my friends, it's very easy. You can go over to the Department of Justice website, type in January 6 cases. They have a spreadsheet that's available for us. I looked it up recently. Less than 1,000 actual cases were charged. Okay, 1,000 criminal charges. Less than 1,000 of them. Might be right around there. It was like 980. Might be a little bit more, a little bit less. This was very, very minor. Okay, look around. Arizona just had the Super Bowl. I bet you add all the numbers up, the extra DUIs, domestic violence, urinating in public, criminal damage, disorderly conducts, all of those. Probably have an extra 1,000 of them. Okay, not a crime of the century. Our government can handle it here. Prosecutors turn that stuff over, no problem. So this was really kind of a giant joke. Honestly, in the context of other criminal events, less than 1,000. So Tucker says the American people should see what happened. Pushing for the release of the footage, Carlson argued on his show that this has been a regime of secrecy and deceit. Called this an outbreak of mob violence, a forgettably minor outbreak by recent standards. He's dead right about that. Yeah, relative to other criminal events, like mass criminal events. You see like mass casualty events. Any other like mass criminal events. If you wanted to put this in that category, say we just created one, it wouldn't even be that big of a deal relative to all of the other ones, provided that there are, actual prosecutions going on. Now, I say it's not that big of a deal relative to something else, right? It is a big deal relative to a small town, and they have some, a certain number of crimes every year. But this has prompted the response, just so we're aware. Put it in context. 1,000 criminal cases in the context of the entire U.S. Department of Justice, the entire U.S. Attorney's Office for all 50 states and all of the other regions, and investigations taking place internationally. The entire DOJ reoriented around this. Extra funding, the FBI, setting up Capitol Hill police stations. They've got the DC Police. They had congressional inquiries, House Intelligence Committee. The whole apparatus of the U.S. government got shifted to focus on this case for less than 1,000 criminal charges that they've been able to actually prosecute. It's a joke. And so Tucker Carlson's going to be able to go through this, and I can't wait to see what he digs up. Now, we do have just a quick exclusive insight to what was happening when Tucker Carlson got news that he was going to get the footage after Kevin McCarthy called Tucker and said, "Why don't you come down to our office? I've got a thumb drive for you." This was the reaction in Tucker's office.
Be quiet!
He was excited.
Whoa!
He was pretty excited about it.
Yes! It's like... Because everyone's getting rich! We don't do math.
Yeah.
Dance, peasants, dance! How welcoming! Ludicrous.
Yeah, baby. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see what Tucker is able to dig up for us, because it's going to be good. Now, I think this actually has some pretty serious implications for the criminal investigation that is occurring all over the rest of the country currently. Julie Kelly had some good insight on this. Remember that there was a sensitive order that was instituted by Julie Kelly. And I'm sorry, by the DOJ, that Julie Kelly is reminding us about. So Julie Kelly, of course, is on Twitter, and she is the senior writer for the American Greatness. And here's what she posted. She said, reminder that Joe Biden's DOJ designated all surveillance video as highly sensitive government material back in March 2021, right? So had January 6, 2021. And then we have the DOJ put up the force fields so that none of the criminal defendants, once all the crimes started to be prosecuted, none of the defendants could actually then get the discovery that they needed to defend themselves, right? So you remember, when you're charged with a crime, the government has all the cards, all of them. They've got the police reports, they've got the officer's notes, they've got, in this case, all the Capitol Hill surveillance, they've got all of the special FBI agents and so on and so forth who are investigating this, that, and the other thing. They have all the cards. So as a defendant, you need to see what they have in order for you to be able to create your defense. If you can't see that stuff, you have no defense. So they've got to turn this stuff over to us. And when they put these force fields up, it makes it very difficult for the defense to get it. Here's what Julie Kelly reminds us. Reminder, they designated this highly sensitive back in March, subject to strict protective orders, so you couldn't see any of it. Even defendants and their lawyers have a tough time accessing it, and digital platform was delayed for months. And we covered that here. I remember talking about cases, I think in the second quarter of 2021, like June, July, and they were saying that they were getting 41,000 hours of video is a lot. Don't get me wrong, right? There's a lot of material on there, and these things in criminal law can be cumbersome, right? Even when we get, let's say, body cameras for 10 officers, right? It's kind of a project to move around gigabytes of data from one place to the other, and they're all labeled, and they're all encrypted, and they're all on proprietary file formats. So you're not just like going to YouTube, oh, watch this video. It's a big, cumbersome, annoying process that you have to go through in order to get the materials. So now you magnify that times, let's say 1,000 defendants, okay, which is a lot, but not a lot for the federal government. It's a lot for, I don't know, the city of Scottsdale, but not for the U.S. government. That's ridiculous. So, they finally are able to assemble all this stuff. It is months after the fact, and the entire time, J6 defendants are sitting in custody. They're just sitting there, and judges aren't granting them any release, any OR release, nothing like that. Meanwhile, you have somebody like Alec Baldwin literally shoots and kills somebody, and he's just roaming around giving presentations on Hollywood stages, right? So you get two standards of justice. One is based on, well, they're both political favors, really. Two standards, two tiers of justice. One is just a favored political operator. The other batch of defendants are not. So Julie Kelly explains this to us. Says, here was the paragraph. This was filed March 31st from the DOJ. This said, this order governs materials provided by the United States at any stage of discovery during this case in which the United States has identified as sensitive or highly sensitive. Examples of materials that we may designate as sensitive or highly sensitive might be personal identity information, information about the government's confidential sources, don't want to see that stuff. Information, you can see here, that may jeopardize witness security, information, contact information, private conversations with individuals who are not related to criminal conduct, sources and methods law enforcement officials have used. And look at this right here. Paragraph G, surveillance camera footage from around the U.S. Capitol Police's extensive system of cameras. Why can't we see that? Why can't you see that? Also, repair estimates from the architect of the Capitol. They're not going to tell you what those cost. So, you got to account for those $2 million of damages. Well, you're going to have a hard time if you're a criminal defendant to get that. So this is the subject of a lot of the controversy. Surveillance camera footage. Why can't we see that? I mean, it was an insurrection, right? It was the breaking of the barriers and insurrecting the Capitol by entering in the walls. Why can't we see that over and over and over? In fact, it should be on repeat. So now that this footage, okay, that 41,000 hours of footage that Tucker Carlson is going to get his hands on, does that make sense anymore? Is the judge going to be able to stand by that? Because as we know, those 41,000 hours are now publicly available. They're now in Tucker Carlson's hands. So the DOJ is going to have a difficult time saying they're still highly classified and highly sensitive, right? And highly secure. Tucker's got them and he's playing them for all of us. So is the DOJ going to be able to continue to make that claim? We'll have to wait and see. Now, we do have another individual named William Pope who is filing demands for discovery to get that stuff. He wants all of the footage because he says it's useful to him as a defense in his case. Of course, we'll cover that in a different segment. But there's a lot of reaction to this. People are very upset that Tucker Carlson is going to be getting his hands on these video files. One of these individuals who's very upset about this is Ron Filipkowski. And he posted this on Twitter, which I got the wrong screenshot, it looks like. Here's somebody named John Legum. Here, Mike Allen is reporting this from Axios. He said, Speaker McCarthy has given Tucker Carlson exclusive access to 41,000 hours. Carlson's producers were on Capitol Hill, and John Legum said, well, the only reason to give the footage exclusively to Tucker is McCarthy knows that the footage will only reinforce the GOP's preferred narrative if it is selectively released by an unrepentant manipulator and liar. You go, oh gosh, are you serious, bro? Come on, Judd. Come on, brother. Look, the January 6th Select Committee was filled up with a bunch of liars and charlatans, literal manipulators. They've all, I mean, you know, Adam, Raskin voted against certifying an election previously and then calls Trump an insurrectionist for making very similar arguments this time around. All right, Liz Cheney was up on there. They were subpoenaing talk show hosts. This was like a new inquisition taking place from the Democratic Party. It was all fake. There was no adversarial proceedings. There was no opposing evidence presented at all. The whole thing was a giant gimmick and a narrative. And so now Tucker Carlson's going to be playing the same game. And he's upset about that? Well, that doesn't make any sense because Tucker's just doing the same thing that they did. It's not even any different. But they're very upset about that, of course. Now, there was another screen grab that I had. Let me see if I can grab this. Don't think that I'll be able to get it. But there was another reaction, of course. Lauren Boebert posted this on Twitter. She said the following: Tucker Carlson now has over 41,000 hours of J6 footage that Pelosi held for over 2 years. Thank you, McCarthy, for following through on this. The public deserves to see everything that was hidden. And so, of course, you get guys like Ron. Ron says, Tucker Carlson is not the public. Yeah, he's very upset about this. and he was also upset. He posted this previously. So we only get to see the rest of this if we watch Tucker Carlson. And we only get to see the clips that Tucker Carlson chooses to edit and air. That was what he posted on Twitter. And you go, Ron, same point to you as we had with Judd, my man. Your party was in charge for the last 2 years. And they had their full set of hearings. They selectively edited and clipped literally everything that they wanted. They had like 8 or 9 hearings on it, one after the other, that really nobody really watched. I mean, it was pretty boring. That's all they did. They didn't release any tapes. They didn't release anything in its full format. So Tucker Carlson's doing the same thing. These double standards, like they can't even, they can't even realize the depth of the double standard before they comment. It's quite shocking. However, we have a lot of questions about what we're going to see in all of this surveillance footage. And there was a great thread that came out from this Twitter account called Free State Will. And Free State Will posted a very good summary of what we might expect from some of these files. He writes, why hasn't the government informed the public that undercover MPD officers, Metro PD from DC, were chanting our house, and repeatedly urging protesters to advance up the northwest steps of the Capitol. You see that? One more time. Why were Metro police officers chanting our house, and repeatedly urging protesters to advance up the Capitol steps? You see a graphic here. This comes from Free State Will, and I believe this was also posted in an article that got picked up or was created by the Epoch Times. But they are referencing here either way, wherever the source came from. Shout out to the source. But Ashley Babbitt is walking right here. Officer 3 is somebody dressed up undercover here, presumably shouting. Officer 2, same thing. Got some serious questions about this. Why were these guys undercover? Why were they shouting our house, our house, our house? Now, we're going to go through a filing by William Pope in a short minute, but I want to reference you Free State Will, who did a great job assembling many of these bits. Public videos show that these were undercover officers, but the government continues to hide these officers' recorded under seal statements from the J6 discovery files. Very interesting why they would be hiding their statements. Is it because they were instigating a lot of these alleged crimes? Americans deserve to see the truth. So there's more stories of plainclothes officers. Now, you might be saying, well, how do you know that they're plainclothes officers? Like, this guy looks just like a guy, and what's the, where does all this come from? How are they assembling this, and what's the source on this? Well, I'll explain that, because what's happening is the internet, and through the release of all of this video footage, is able to corroborate and cross-reference and basically index every single one of these individuals and match them up. And what you'll find is, as we scroll through this, they're noticing that there were armed undercover DOJ, DEA agents who are also moving around all over the place. In fact, here is one screenshot from a Metro PD officer's body cam. We're going to watch the video of this in short order, where this Metro police officer comes up and he talks to this person who doesn't look like a police officer, right? Just cover this part out. Cover all of this stuff up above, the credentials that he's flashing for us. And it looks just like a regular protester. In fact, it looks like he might even have an American flag bandana on, backwards hat, and some sunglasses on. But he's flashing his credentials. And this came from body camera from the police. So, okay, an undercover officer, okay. Was he just there observing, or was he chanting our house, our house, our house? Here's another undercover officer who also looks undercover. And we have questions about what he was doing and what he was saying and where he was going. Now, I'm not going to play this video. This is, again, from @FreeStateWill. I encourage you to go over there and support him and follow the full thread. Not going to play this one. There's some F-bombs and MFers and mother effing and so on in this one. But this officer is saying something like, they set us up. They set us up, over and over and over. Another video that I'll send you over there to watch. But remember those two individuals that we saw flashing their credentials? Yeah, this is what another body camera video shows us from one Metro PD officer who was Axon Body 3 camera. You see the date on this one is January 6, 2021. And so what we're able to do when we have all of these cameras is piece all of this together, okay? Take a look at this one officer and say, what's he doing? Where's he going? Who is he interacting with? And in fact, back during the days after, in the aftermath of January 6th, a lot of the lefties were doing this. They were saying, let's go root out all these insurrectionists, when they thought that they were all MAGA people and they didn't realize that they were all feds. Then I think they started to realize that, there are a lot of feds in here, and so they turned off that work. But then the Republicans are now picking this up. The right, the right is picking this up. And they're saying, a lot of these people like Ray Epps. Ray Epps is a sort of a symbol. He's symbolic of a caricature of a lot of other things that were happening. Okay, Ray Epps alone didn't cause all of the events, but he was just one person who was in was very suspicious kind of individual, a character of this entire show. And we have questions about how many others like Ray Epps were there that also were involved in so-called criminality that also didn't get prosecuted for whatever reason. Why is that? So we start this video now, and these officers are just riding around. We're going to see this interaction must have shown up. Some defense attorney must have requested this, or this got shown up in some discovery. Somebody did a public records file request, whatever. Don't know. But watch what happens. So this officer then...
Hey, how you guys doing?
And he stops these people right here.
Give me a second. Just doing a little investigation.
Says we're just doing an investigation.
Asking this respectfully. Is anyone armed? Anyone
Yes,
armed?
we're all police.
Police? Yeah, law enforcement.
Let's start that one more time.
Hey,
Two
how you guys
officers.
doing? Quick question. Give me a second. Just doing a little investigation. Asking
Four
this
cops.
respectfully. Is anyone armed? Anyone
Yes,
armed?
we're all police.
Police? Yeah, law enforcement.
Yeah.
Can you show me your credentials?
Okay, so these cops didn't recognize that these were other cops, right? You guys armed? I'm asking you respectfully, are you armed? And they just basically got ambushed, right? There was 4 cops. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 that just circled up on these bros real fast. If they weren't cops, like this could have gone a different way. You see like they're just walking down the street, and watch from the back and from the front, right? It's like a little operation there. See those 2 cops coming? Boom, cut them off and circle them up. Boom, stopping you. So it's like, you know, they like literally an ambush, right? They think that these are Trump insurrectionists, is what I'm saying. They're going to arrest these, you know, they're about to go hard on these bros. 4 cops going to go, you know, they saw them carrying guns around or something. So they opened this up. All right. They're walking down the street. They're on 3rd Avenue and something. And we go, okay, you get them from the front. We'll get them from the back. Let's surprise them pretty hard.
Hey, how you guys doing? Quick question.
Oh,
Give me a second. Just doing a little investigation. Asking this respectfully. Is anyone armed? Anyone
Yes,
armed?
we're all police.
Police? Yeah, law enforcement.
they're all
Can you show
cops.
me your credentials?
All of them. 1, 2,
Appreciate it.
got it.
Appreciate it.
3, 4.
That's all.
4 cops.
You got to do a little bit better at hiding that.
Oh, did you hear him call him out? Oh, you better do a little bit better at hiding that, dummy.
Okay. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. That's all I need. You got to do a little bit better at hiding that.
You got to do a little bit better at hiding that, buddy boy. They're all just laughing. It's cops everywhere. It's all cops. The cops are investigating themselves. They're just different agencies, different branches, different divisions. Absolutely outstanding. And so you can see they're meant to look like not cops. And if there's other footage of them causing other people to be instigated to insurrect, so-called, the Capitol, where is that footage? We'd like to see it. You can see why they may not want to publicly release all of that. Here's another scene from inside the Capitol. Do your non-uniformed guys have any identifiers? Do your non-uniformed guys, you know, like those guys that we just saw walking around with guns that even other police officers didn't know about? Any of them, can we tell who they are?
Barrel. Short guy, dark hair, black vest, thin blue line thing on, dark hair, and he's got like a little 27 or something on his hip. No police identification on him at all. I couldn't get to him because there were so many people. But just keep an eye on
White male?
white male, dark hair.
All right.
It looked like a grayish black, maybe a digital
Do any of your
fatigue.
non-uniform guys have any identifiers? Like
They will have a wristband. Their guns will have a candy stripe on the barrel.
Okay. He says this officer here, you can see this guy right here poking through this little, not sure what we're looking through here. This officer says, do your guys have any identifiers on them? And he says, yeah, they do. But he's talking about the guys who are in there with guns. That's not what this guy's asking about. This guy's asking about the guys who are not there with guns. The guys who are doing the Fed surrecting. Because remember, there weren't any guns there. For all of the so-called seditionists who were going to take over the country, where were all the guns?
Digital of your non-uniform guys have any identifiers?
Non-uniform.
They will have a wristband. Their guns will have a candy stripe on the barrel.
Okay.
I don't know the wristband color, but they'll have a wristband somewhere, okay?
What?
This is really, what is it, Olympus's fault?
Yeah.
All right, so we still don't know who the undercover people were or what type of gear they were wearing and so on and so forth. This was another footage from some body camera. And this guy, according to Free State Will, says that he is an FBI informant in the Capitol, right? Says that he comes and tells an officer the Proud Boys were actually there helping the police. For more information on the informant, you can see another tweet from Stephen Horn. Okay, the point is the internet is able to identify these people and piece this together, which is going to be a lot of fun when we get to see it.
Got him to listen and start standing down against the cops.
What's that?
Some Proud Boys got him to listen and stop standing down. They got him to stand down against the cops.
Yeah, right.
Proud Boys got him to stand down. And many people of the Proud Boys are being prosecuted. But conveniently, individuals like Ray Epps are not being prosecuted, even though they were there and they were saying and doing the same things that many others were doing who were in fact prosecuted. Of course, Tucker Carlson, I'm sure, is going to deliver a home run on that. We can't wait to see what he comes out with. And I'm very much looking forward to the full files being released for all of America to see. And of course, we'll continue to follow. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you are watching this. Now, we're not done with January 6th, because when that footage comes out, we have some defendants who have been charged with crimes who are going to be very interested in this. William Pope, a January 6th defendant, is fighting for this discovery. Tucker Carlson is going to be getting his hands on 41,000 hours of footage, but criminal defendants like William Pope have been fighting for these hours of video for a very long time, and there's been a battle going on in the court of law. So today we're going to go through a written response by William Pope, and my understanding is he doesn't have counsel, so he drafted this response himself, and he filed it demanding that the government, who has control of all of the evidence, gives him the discovery so he can start going through it. Now, previously, this was kind of a long shot because the DOJ had been making the point that it's all highly sensitive. But if Tucker Carlson is going to be given access to 41,000 hours, is it really still highly sensitive? It's, the cat's kind of out of the bag at this point. So maybe William Pope is able to actually get this, and maybe the judge will listen to some arguments based on the fact that this evidence is now out there. Okay, previously the judge would say, well, you can't just access anything you want and come up with weird, bizarre stories and give you this opportunity to go out on a fishing expedition. But that's not happening here because the evidence is about to be released publicly, and all J6 defendants, according to Kevin McCarthy and Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're going to get access to this stuff too. So in fact, this motion is likely going to be moot at some point regardless. But my question is, what are the judges going to do with this newfound evidence? Are they going to honor arguments about Ray Epps? Are they going to honor arguments about collusion or conspiracies that show that there were a number of undercover feds that maybe aren't conspiracies? Right? It was a conspiracy until you look at the videos, you assemble it, and you say, oh, it's not actually a conspiracy anymore. Fed, protester. If it's that situation, well, is a judge going to listen to those things? Let's get a quick summary over from the Epoch Times that did some good reporting and summation on this. You see, this story was drafted by Joseph Hanneman, posted February 18th from our friends at the Epoch Times. And he says, 3 undercover Metro police officers joined the march of protesters up the northwest side of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, including one who climbed over a barricade and pushed others toward the Capitol, and another who walked behind Ashley Babbitt and predicted that someone will get shot. This came out from a newly disclosed court document filed by William Pope of Topeka, Kansas. We're going to read through those documents in a quick second. This also shows that MPD bicycle officers stopped 4 armed men in plain clothes, the video that we watched in a prior segment, and those men turned out to be federal agents. Video included with Pope's filings show that uniformed officers were, quote, set up to fail on January 6th. So we're going to go through those filings. Let's take a look at both of those. This is William Pope. He is the individual who has been charged with crimes for January 6 activities. And the court docket is out of the DC Circuit Court. You see it is United States versus Pope, case ending in 128. And as we look at the most recent filings, I want to show you just a couple things that have happened. So first and foremost, this case has actually been pretty quiet for a little bit of time. The last minute entry prior to the one I want to show you is on December 2nd. They set another court date, February 3rd. We had a notice of appearance, so the government got a new prosecutor involved in this case. There was a motion to modify the protective order. Okay, so we're going to skip over this filing. This was filed by William Pope. Remember, there's a protective order that the DOJ has issued. Think of it like a force field that they put up all over and around the Capitol Hill surveillance footage. You can't get access to this stuff. Protective order activate, one of those things. So it goes up. So in this case, the defendant, William Pope, is asking the court to modify that. He's saying, I need all of that footage. I need those 41,000 hours to show you that the FBI was conducting the Fedsurrection, or whatever his argument would be. So he says, can we please modify this? Now, there was a minute entry that took place. We have this calendared for a March 3rd status conference, which is going to be March 3rd status conference. So in about 2 weeks from now, we'll have another court date. But there were additional filings. So Pope says, modify the protective order. The government responded right here on February 10th. We're going to read through that one relatively quickly. The government says, no, no, no. We need the protective order. We need this to stay in place. And Pope responded on February 17th, and we're going to read this one as well. This is his response to the government. So he says, modify it. The government says, no, don't. And he gets the final word in his reply, which we will read. So now that we are up to speed, we're caught up on the docket, let's dive right in. So the government here is responding to Pope's request for discovery. In this case, it is about the modification of the protective order. So the government responds, and they say, on February 10th, 8 pages long, out of the District of Columbia Court, prosecutors say, all right, the United States comes through our lawyer, and we respectfully submit this response to pro se defendant William Pope, meaning he doesn't have a lawyer. He fired his other lawyer or asked for a withdrawal or something happened, and he's going pro se at the moment. William Pope is asking, according to the government, they say, he wants unfettered and unsupervised access to global discovery contained in relativity and evidence.com, which are sort of like cloud data centers where all of this discovery lives. The government has previously responded to Pope's motion, which was filed and incorporated before. They say now Pope argued that, among other things, that the government is complaining about giving access. And they say the court heard oral argument on these motions and took it under advisement. So meaning they're going to wait and see. So then Pope filed another update for some travel arrangements. And the government, and this is actually a lot less interesting than I thought. All right, so we're going to fast forward through this. Here you go. Now we're talking about discovery. So the government says, look, Pope doesn't need this stuff. All right. First of all, they say no other defendant, or including any other pro se defendant, has gotten all of the access to all of the files, all of the surveillance, all of the hours. They're not giving it to anybody. On February 7th, Judge Maida said in another case that the defendant has no constitutional right to global discovery. And so think about this in a close analogy in this is like a DUI case. Let's say you're charged with a DUI and they draw your blood out and they draw 2 samples. So in Arizona, you get the government gets 1 sample, the defense gets a sample if they want it. Now, let's say we go in there and we say, all right, look, we have questions about how you tested our client's blood. And we have questions about how you test the blood in general. And so we want evidence about not only the testing of our client's run, and the way they test your DUIs for DUIs is they take your blood, put it in like this big pizza tray, and the big pizza tray has like 110 vials in it, and the machine just picks them up, tests them, pokes them, tests them, pokes them, tests them, puts them back. So you say, I want to challenge my run. I want to challenge my pizza tray. Okay. Well, maybe you can get that evidence, but you say, but I think it's bigger than that. I think it's all of the testing and all of the pizza trays and all of the DUIs and all of the machines, because I think you're using a wrong calibrator, right, across your whole lab. And I want records for everything to test your calibrations and how you're formulating your standards. And I want all of the evidence. Well, the court's going to say, well, you don't need all of that stuff. Okay. You just need your run. And if you find a problem in your run, let me figure out the other stuff. And then you can expand out to go get the other pizza trays and all of the other runs. Same thing here. So the court is saying, well, if you can't figure out what the problem is with your individual case and all of this surveillance footage, I'm not going to give you access to 41,000 hours, because then I got to give access to 41,000 hours to every other defendant, just like every other defendant in a DUI case would suddenly get access to, every other run, and it would really slow down the system, truthfully. So it's almost an efficiency thing, right? They just say, well, yeah, it might be a good point for you to get this stuff so that you can make good legal arguments, but we don't care about any of that. Sorry. We're just going to say, for efficiency, you don't have a constitutional right to it. So they say that, moreover, the DC Circuit Court, consistent with other courts, has previously affirmed cases that has limited discovery. In another case, in Clark, standby counsel was retained. And so here you could get Mr. Pope 4 to 8 hours of access per week. And that could alleviate his travel requirements. And so they're saying, look, the fact that he can't pay to come here and look at all this stuff, and it's not our problem, right? He's on his own. Here's what you can do, Judge. In this case, they say the balancing of interests requires that Pope and his request for unfettered access to sensitive and highly sensitive material be denied, right? A criminal defendant in America wants access to evidence, in this case, the surveillance footage, because we have a sneaking suspicion that the feds were not being honest with us, that what they told us happened here, and this was all just this like rambunctious, riotous, insurrectionist group of people that overwhelmed all of our 23 federal agencies that were there, is ridiculous. So maybe we have a little bit of an inkling that we want to investigate something else. They say denied. Sorry, it's too highly sensitive for you guys. Yeah. It's just surveillance footage. That's all. The government says, as this court has already recognized, and it's true because we're playing in a system in the DC circuit where this is the worst thing that has ever happened ever, January 6th. I think Joe Biden even said it was the worst thing since the Civil War, which I think means he forgot about Pearl Harbor, or he didn't forget about Pearl Harbor, which is probably worse. So as this court has already recognized, the protective order as it stands is needed to adequately protect the government's legitimate interests. Yeah, in not showing you all of their undercover feds. Specifically, the government has established good cause that the restrictions on access to sensitive and highly sensitive materials are needed to protect significant national security, right? Law enforcement and other governmental interests. Moreover, the government and the defense have both provided adequate solutions that allow Pope access to all discovery in this case without stepping and sidestepping the parameters of the protective order. For these reasons, they say Pope and his motion should be denied and discovery should be addressed in other ways. Signed by Kelly Moran. Kelly Moran, I think. Kelly Moran. Moran is here. Kelly Moran is in the House. Matthew Graves, the U.S. Attorney, signed on the document as well. So this is the filing. This is the government's filing to stop Pope from getting access to all of the rest of the Capitol Hill footage. Now, Pope gets the final word in these requests, and so he submitted his response here. William Alexander Pope files a 19-page response to the government's continued opposition to modify the protective order and to compel full access to discovery. Now, as I mentioned, William Alexander Pope is writing this pro per. Okay, so he's representing himself at this moment, which is interesting that he's doing that. And so that sort of, offers an opportunity to say what you want in some respect. Let's see how this goes. So William Pope writes, as this court will recall, I have been trying to gain full access to discovery from the very moment I began representing myself. When the government opposed full discovery access, Judge Contreras instructed each party to attempt to find a solution, and if it could not be resolved, to bring the matter back to him. After discussions with the government, it became clear they were not willing to voluntarily grant the full discovery access needed to examine the evidence and prepare my defense, so I filed my motion to modify the protective order. He says, since then, the government has sought to blame the discovery access challenges I face on my decision to exercise my constitutional right to represent myself. However, as noted in my previous filing, the federal rules of evidence require the courts must ensure that pro se defendants have access to discovery. It is the duty of the government to provide me full access, and it is the duty of this court to ensure the government has provided that access to me. So these challenges that I face are not of my creation, but are of the government's creation. I merely am asking the court to compel the government to provide what should have already been provided voluntarily. Withholding all access to discovery violates the rules of evidence and denies me due process. And I couldn't agree more. And I mean that genuinely. This is excellent, right? I agree this is a due process violation. It's a discovery violation. If you can't see the evidence, and one of the key defenses is that there wasn't a global insurrection that was sort of the pretext for all of these crimes, that's a pretty good defense. And it is not afforded when you're not provided access. And this is directly explaining that. And I think this is brilliant because what he's doing is he is using his status as a pro se defendant to say that that gives him additional rights. He's saying, Judge, I'm a pro se defendant. The rules require that you give me this stuff. If he wasn't pro se, he wouldn't be able to latch onto this rule. And then his attorney would file a motion that wouldn't be able to use that rule. And then his attorneys would get rejected. So the attorneys would then be stuffed. They would say, they'd have to go back to Mr. Pope and say, well, the judge denied my request for your global discovery. So you see here, by actually not having an attorney, Mr. Pope has found himself a new argument. He continues, and it is not for the government to determine what is relevant to my defense. Only I can do that. The government has also made relevant evidence much more difficult for me because they have not identified every CCTV and body-worn camera that is directly relevant to my case. This has forced me to search for that information myself. And the government will often do this. They'll just dump a big wheelbarrow or dump truck full of files and folders on your front lawn, and they'll say, good luck. Hopefully, you find what you need in there. The government, says Mr. Pope, also argued that the global discovery is not relevant to my case. That's what a Fed would say. Yet I have already shown the court clear examples of exculpatory evidence in the global discovery that the government failed to provide directly to me. Neither of the court-appointed attorneys that represented me identified those materials, nor did the standby counsel. It was my own keen attention to detail that recognized those materials as relevant to my case. He's blasting his prior lawyers. And as this court knows, writes Pope, the government has been showing exhibits at every January 6th trial from various times and places containing clips where the defendants on trial are not present. Because of that, I must study how scenes unfolded in times and places where I too was not present so that I may counter non-factual exhibits presented by the government in court. The government's use of unrelated, low-level opinions to build a wobbly house of cards opposition does not supersede our Sixth Amendment rights, the federal rules of evidence, or any of the other rules under the United States Supreme Court. Individual rights must not be sacrificed in court to satisfy the whims of the government. Beautiful. So now he continues, and he writes, in an 11th hour attempt to prevent me from having full access to the discovery, the government has proposed having a third-party investigator review my discovery for me. The government is basing this proposal taken on action in another case. He says, I'm concerned that an investigator would be an interference in my defense, just as government counsel is now. The government also made this proposal to the court without even knowing if there was anyone even in Topeka who would be willing to do this. So why did the government not explore this idea during the 2 months the court provided to investigate the options? But even if there is somebody in Topeka, he says, I wouldn't want them anyways. They're not going to do the research that I can do myself. So I don't want any barriers or burdens to detriment my defense preparations. He says the government put forward a Jim Crow proposal, he says. The government wishes this court to force me to expend my time and my monetary resources to access my discovery in Lawrence, Kansas. They want him to travel there. He says, as I told you previously, this option will be very expensive for me and essentially a tax on due process rights by forcing me to travel and give up my time and take off time off work and go and get in the car, and gas is expensive and all this. The process is in many ways the penalty. And he says the Supreme Court has said in other things that discovery and due process rights are fundamental and that any impediments to that are an attack on civil rights. Now, here's where he's talking about this CCTV camera. He says, since the government has allowed me to, quote, create still images from highly sensitive CCTV, they are essentially conceding that they're not concerned with the defendants possessing the files that identify the location and the positioning of those cameras. Great point. The government says, look, we're not going to give you all the files everywhere, but we're going to give you some access to some of the files, and you can just basically export them frame by frame and recreate them. He says that means that I can see everything. This is ironic since the location and position of cameras have been a significant part of their argument from giving me access to those. And now I do. He says, now I can be able to identify where all the cameras are in the Capitol building. He says, and the movements of individuals that took place 2 years ago do not constitute a national security threat. He's giving us an example of a Flipbook here, showing how you can take pictures, separate the slides, and create a Flipbook. So he says that basically not giving him access is ridiculous because you can just take pictures and create a Flipbook of this stuff and recreate the videos. He says, now, as this court will recall, the government presented a sworn affidavit by the biased DBAs in a previous filing. And they said that if they gave access to all the files, then they could recreate a layout of the Capitol. So the U.S. Capitol Police say a certain amount of this is national security, it's security information. They say the government is concerned about some of this stuff, but not all of it. He says, for instance, body camera footage from Officer Foskett shows him walking into the Senate at a certain time. This area has been identified by the government as relevant to my case, but the government prohibits me from possessing the CCTV footage of this area because it's, quote, highly sensitive. However, Officer Foskett's body camera footage is not designated as sensitive or highly sensitive, and because of that, the protective order specifies that it is not subject to this court seal. No logic to this. I should get access to that file. Why wouldn't it? In the September 2021 Media Law Resource newsletter, it was noted that there were some very egregious problems with the government not giving access. And here's another good section. William Pope writes, the government seems to be, and I think this is true, opposing discovery access to conceal their own activity. Ooh. He says, since the government has gone to great lengths to keep me from accessing my discovery, the court should consider whether the government is doing so to conceal their own activity. From the moment I decided to represent myself, the government has continuously tried to suggest to this court that I will bring an entrapment defense. They've discouraged me from representing myself. They've tried to prevent me from mounting an entrapment defense, and they're trying to prevent me from getting access to discovery. He says, I emphasize my position on direct and full access to discovery and that I'm guaranteed right to these rules by the rules of evidence. And he's talking about his lawyers, about bringing up entrapment and some other things. He's sharing some emails. He says, however, in my previous work as an auditor for the state of Kansas, we viewed agency attempts to hide information as a strong indication of wrongdoing. We did not ignore when they hid evidence. We tried to investigate further. So the same government that is prosecuting me for entirely peaceful conduct is also trying to prevent me from accessing discovery. Why not be transparent if there is nothing to hide? He says, it is no secret. The government was conducting undercover operations on January 6. Michael Sherwin, who was the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, told this entire world in an interview. He says, does the government, yeah, he did do that, right? Does the government undercover Fed narrative a wild conspiracy created by their own employee? They say, if so, several body-worn cameras produced in this discovery show that Mr. Sherwin, the U.S. Attorney, was there. They also say Officer Foskett's body camera includes a conversation with how to identify persons undercover. We saw that in a prior segment. There's also body camera footage showing Brown, Stiles, Vanacore responding to reports of men carrying concealed firearms. They were approached. They showed their DOJ, DEA credentials. He says, these are not wild conspiracies. These are facts on video. The only reason I'm able to access these facts and share them as public exhibits is because they are not designated as highly sensitive. However, the government continues to try to block me from having full access to this discovery. The government's concern is that they might reveal illicit behavior themselves. He says it's my constitutional right to fight these charges without the presence of counsel. I must manage my own case. And he says, I still only have access to less than 1% of the discovery. I need full access in order to sift through them and determine what is relevant. I followed this court's directives, and so I'm asking for the following. I need immediate access to 4.9 million files in the discovery. The court can immediately grant me full access to evidence.com, CCTV footage. And so he wants that ordered. Submitted February 17th, the year of our Lord, 2023, by William Pope, pro se officer of the court, he says. And so that's submitted. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the judge does with this, okay? Because the judge has to be extremely careful now, because this is a person who's not represented, and the judge does not want to accidentally encroach on his constitutional rights. And so if the judge, if there is the potential for a constitutional violation, it would be the judge sort of railroading this, right? Just going right over, nope, you don't get this, you don't get this, you don't get this. Sorry, good luck. Trial scheduled next month. I'll see you in court and we'll see how you do. That would create a whole slew of appealable issues. So in this case, right, and the judge doesn't want to do this all again. So let's say that judge denies. This case goes to trial. He could lose, make an appeal. I had a discovery violation. I needed that evidence to make this argument. If the judge is not very careful on that, right, if the judge sort of screwed that portion up, then a court of appeals might turn around and send it back down and ask for a new trial. And so the judge is really, really going to want to avoid, having that happen. But what we're seeing here is more of the arguments of government complicity, government collusion, government incitement making its way into these filings. And as Tucker gets more of this footage out in front of the American people, these arguments might carry some weight in front of the judges. Of course, we're still talking about DC circuit judges, so we're not going to hold our breath too much. But it's interesting to read this, and it's very interesting to see what William Alexander Pope is doing. So shout outs to William Alexander Pope out there and the people who are supporting him and helping him get through this difficult situation. We're keeping our thoughts out for you. Hopefully this continues to mature nicely for this case. But of course, we'll continue to follow it, and we'll ask you to subscribe and join us as we do, because there will be a lot more to come from that. Now, William Pope also submitted the Flipbook. Now, I forgot to mention this. This is the Flipbook that he referenced. He gave us instructions on the Flipbook itself, but then he actually created it. So he took this from the government's files, from their video. He went and took a screenshot of this. And here it is, all the different screenshots of the video. And you'll notice that he has in red circled somebody. Now, if you actually watch the video, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is the scene on J6. Now they're slowing this video, and what's going on over here? Who is pushing that sign right there? Who was that? Who was that pushing that sign? Oh my goodness. Right there. Yeah, who was that person? Very, very curious, right? Yeah, a lot of questions about who that individual was. And if you take a look at the Flipbook filing, at the ultra zoomed in photo on the first page, oh, yeah, it's that guy, huh? Who is that guy? Why does he keep showing up all over the place? Weird. Very strange. Feds literally pushing the stuff into the crowd. Everywhere you turn, it's just feds filling in everywhere you look. So, of course, that's the William Pope case. We'll continue to cover this case and all of the other J6 cases, and we wish William Pope and everybody who is fighting back against an overly bearing and burdensome government the best as they fight on. Of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. And we have one final segment to get to today. And now we're turning our attention over to the Twitter files, because we've got a couple short Twitter files to get to before we jump into your questions and your comments. And we have them now. Yeah. Twitter Files 16 from Matt Taibbi reveal more collusion between the government and the media as they never stop working to censor us and control the narratives. We're going to go through them. We're also going to take a look at Undead FOIA, which is another good Twitter follow. Of course, Matt Taibbi was the individual who dropped Twitter Files 16. We've covered all of the prior Twitter files up until this point. So if you haven't seen those are available on this channel. But Taibbi calls this one Twitter Files 16 Comic Interlude, a media experiment. And we see here somebody who is highly involved in the saga. Here's what Matt writes. The Twitter files have revealed a lot. Thousands of moderation requests from every corner of the government. Feds mistaking both conservatives and leftists for fictional Russians. Even Twitter deciding on paper to cede moderation authority to the U.S. intelligence community. Yeah, all Americans were insurrectionists. We were all wrecking our democracy, all Russian assets, and so on. Here are a couple examples. This was a clipping from Taibbi, says that internal guidance from Twitter showed that any user, quote, identified by the U.S. intelligence community as a state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operations against targets shall not be allowed to advertise on Twitter. Isn't that fun? So it's not that Twitter gets to make those decisions anymore about whether somebody is a good advertiser or not, a safe advertiser or not. It's really about whatever the U.S. intelligence agencies say, because they're in charge. They run Twitter. Another example. This came out from Yoel Roth. Says on January 23rd, 2018, Yoel sent an email over to Emily. Says, unlike hashtag release the memo, this one is being driven by data from Hamilton 68. I'll do another sweep for spam. But as of yesterday, this looked like a right-leaning hashtag about the shutdown, which only got the label of Russia because Hamilton. How can we push publicly back against Hamilton? I don't think there's anything too noteworthy about this beyond that. Hamilton 68 was a fake think tank that was trying to create a fake Russian hoax narrative. Here was another email. Hi, folks. I suspended 12 counts of AR origin, 10 counts of VE origin that were tweeting about Ukraine and Nazis and were clustered by IPs. After reviewing these accounts, we're recommending to request an ID. We found evidence that suggests it is linked to individuals in the Pirate Party and others on the left of the political spectrum. So doesn't sound like it's Russian right-wingers. It's left-wingers from the Pirate Party in Catalonia. All right. So that's not what they told us throughout many of the news cycles that we had to endure. So Matt continues. He says, that's been the summation of a lot of these things. U.S. government officials who are not supposed to censor Americans because we have the First Amendment, censoring Americans because they don't care about the First Amendment. Got it. So the next tweet from Matt says, these and at least a dozen other newsworthy revelations produced exactly zilch in mainstream news coverage in the last 2 months because our media is the worst. Then House hearings were held last week, and we covered those at length, at which one witness told a story about Donald Trump asking to remove a mean tweet by Chrissy Teigen. The press went bananas. And you see here TMZ says, oh my gosh, who is this woman? I can't even read that. I don't even know what it says. Trump White House asked Twitter to take down Chrissy Teigen's mean tweet is another headline. Chrissy Teigen reacts in disbelief after her anti-Trump tweet is read in Congress. Donald Trump asked Twitter to take down a Chrissy Teigen tweet. You see how excited they are about that? Which is wrong also, by the way. Trump shouldn't have asked anybody to take down any stupid tweets. It's ridiculous. Trump should do it. Nobody should do it. But there wasn't all the headlines when Adam Schiff Pencilneck was censoring his own constituents in America. Matt Taibbi says, purely to show the bankruptcy of the media in this area, which we like to indulge in, let's introduce a pair of loud new data points and see if any press figures at all cover either of them. So shout out to the loser journos in the media. Matt Taibbi's calling you out. If you don't cover this, you're even bigger of a loser journo. If a president freaking out about one tweeter is news, right? Because if they're saying, oh, Trump and Teigen, surely a U.S. senator thinking on 300 plus of his own constituents must be. They'll cover that, right? Here's an email from Kevin Kane, a suspicious account from Senator Angus King. I spoke with campaign director for Angus King this morning, who provided a very large list of 354 suspicious Twitter accounts that they have identified. So one senator is saying, please get rid of my critics. Please silence their Twitter accounts. They're causing me ruckus. 354. Another one is Maine Senator Angus King. He wrote to Twitter to call a slew of accounts suspicious. Here are some of the reasons that they were suspicious. Rand Paul visit is excitement. Somebody's excited that Rand Paul's coming. probably a terrorist. Probably got to get him off Twitter. Also upset, followed by Breaky, which means illegal. Bot averages 20 tweets a day. Wow, if you tweet 20 times a day, that's a bot. You should be removed. Mentions immigration, also illegal if you're following Senator Angus King. King's office declined to comment, losers. If Dick Nixon sniffed glue, this is what his enemies list might have looked like. And it looks like they're giving us an actual Google sheet. Maybe we can see who's on the list. In fact, we can. Look at this right here. Here's the list. Here's what your senators are creating. Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is coming from a senator's office? Oh, man. Are you serious? This is a senator's hit list in an Excel file that they sent over for removal. Oh, my goodness. Sent to Facebook and Facebook response. So this one's going to Facebook. Oh, but look, they're doing it to Facebook, removed, pending. So they are, holy moly. This is the Twitter account. Okay, so this is the next tab over. These are all the people on Twitter. All of these people. Treason Summit. Why flagged? Scott Dworkin. Treason Summit. Anti-King. Look at this. Suspected bot, self-proclaimed bot, jab at main dads. 720, anti-King, possible troll, but occasionally expressive positive sentiment about ask. All these people are bots, QAnoners, followed by Ringelstein, followed by Breaky, whoever that is. Breaky retweet. This is an enemies list from a U.S. senator's office. A public enemies list on Twitter. Amazing. Now, you have to understand that they do this stuff, you know, that they're sort of, this is like competitive monitoring. It's monitoring your competitors and keeping tabs of these people. But these are also, I would presume, many of these people are American citizens. You know, the government can't do this. If you're a private political consultant, yeah, I think you could probably do this and get away with it. All right, who do we have to, you know, respond to and neutralize out there? This is a senator's office. Asks, look at all these people. Look at all these names. I am shocked about this. I can't even believe this is coming from a government official. All the Facebook accounts, all the Facebook groups, all the names. Unbelievable. Wow. All right. So back over to Matt Taibbi. He says, and that is, yeah, if Dick Nixon sniffed glue, this is what his enemies list might have looked like. Absolutely unbelievable. So as to not only focus on Democrats or those who caucus with Democrats, here's another contribution from a Republican, Mark Lindsay, a State Department official most famous for offering to donate his brain to science after a claimed brush with the Havana syndrome. U.S. diplomat Mark Lindsay, mysterious injury while stationed in China, says, I'm going to donate my brain to science. I probably can keep it, Mark. That's okay. Lindsay wrote to Twitter, bluntly asking to remove 14 accounts, distinguished among other things by skepticism of Russiagate. If you don't agree with the fake Russiagate story, you've got to get your Twitter account deleted. The below are some Russian-controlled accounts that I think you will want to look into to delete. Okay? Holy crap. This is from this loser, Mark Lindsay. He's sending an email from a state.gov address, okay? State.gov. That's like sending, you know, you send stuff that you want to have some impact from that email address. You know, it might as well be like from the office of the president, okay? From the U.S. federal government. And at the bottom, it says sensitive but unclassified. And so this is literally Mark Lindsay from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He sends a letter to Lisa Roman at twitter.com. He says, hi, Lisa. Nice to be in touch with you. I'm an American Foreign Service officer that works at the State Department, and I've been working on Russia issues for more than 2 decades. Doing a little credibility drop there. Lisa's like, Okay. I speak Russian and know the country and its disinformation efforts very well. Okay, that's great, Mark. Nice job. Significantly and somewhat rare at the State Department, he says, I'm a lifelong Republican that has worked for the RNC, so in my work, I've been able to identify a lot of Russian-controlled Twitter accounts that have made it through some of your previous purges. A significant number of these Russian-controlled fake accounts try to pose as Republicans. But when I get into them, I can see obvious mistakes, including grammar, that don't make any sense if you were really a Republican. Also, I don't know any Republicans I've worked with on campaigns here in the U.S. that are obsessed with Ukraine, and many of the accounts that are the followers below are posting obscure court rulings about Ukraine, postings about Ukrainian politicians that the real Republicans couldn't care less about. I also noticed distinct increases in their tweeting around the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. And this email is back in April 14, 2020, so this isn't like recent Ukraine stuff. Because of the sensitive nature of my work, he says, I would ask that in your discussion, the below are some Russian government-controlled accounts that I think you will want to look into and delete. Many of the followers of these accounts are Russian-controlled disinformation accounts as well, and I can provide many more of these Russian-controlled Twitter accounts to you in the coming weeks. Now, because of the sensitive nature of my work, I would ask that your discussions with others, you not mention my name, or if you forward the below, that you take out my name. This is illegal government peddling. Like, what's he trying to do? Hide this? I would be happy to discuss with you in more detail on the phone if you would like, and we could set up a call to speak this week if you would want. Thank and best regards, Mark. Now look at all these names, okay? So he's got Bravo, Thunderstruck. He's got Spicy Noodles is here, Russia Hack, and so on. Now we're going to pause on this real quickly because there was also a very interesting post from Undead FOIA. And Undead FOIA is an individual that you can follow over on Twitter at undeadfoia.com. And he is referencing exactly what was in that list of names, that email we just read through with all of those names. Here's what he says about that. He says, tonight, Matt Taibbi posted an email that scares me, quite honestly, right? And FOIA's been on Twitter for a long time. Shout out to Undead FOIA. I've had a couple of Twitter accounts banned with no explanation, and I've suspected that I will show up in the Twitter files, but instead, some of my friends did, right? Everybody on that list. He says, I personally know 15 pounds to go. That is a FOIA fan who played a crucial role in teaching me about FOIA. He's extremely kind and generous American. He never posted anything even remotely pro-Russian. But here we see an official State Department asking Twitter to destroy his account. Likewise, I know Gooserfer to Hendry and I know Spicy Noodles. They're established members of the corner I speak to often. They're Americans, not Russians. These are absolutely real people in real account. I do not speak to Thunderstruck, but I know his account. Never seen anything pro-Russian. Russia Hack Site, another account I'm familiar with. I don't follow that account, but this is quite shocking to me. I can say that 3 to 4 of these accounts were probably only flagged because they tweeted or retweeted items on Russiagate. That's it. This so-called Russia expert says this without a shred of evidence. This is information warfare and nothing less. They didn't like what these accounts said, so they made up reasons to have them destroyed, which of course is accurate and true. And so it's amazing, right, that there was that type of understanding that you could just send an email to Twitter and they would take action. And so we're going to go right back to the Twitter files. We have some more from Matt Taibbi. But before we continue, let's remember to get ultra energized and healthy by supporting our friends over at Field of Greens, supporting ourselves by going to fieldofgreens.com and getting your super greens, superfood, and saving $15 by using promo code Robert. Because as we know, it'd be very nice to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, but we've all seen the fad diets. We've all seen the ads. They don't work, but we know what does. Eating healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, you imagine the weight probably falls right off. But vegetables, Who's got time and fruits? You know, it's a lot of work. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. You can go to fieldofgreens.com right now and get a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper metabolism reboots our nutrition so that we burn calories faster, the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand that's backed by a better health promise. You're going to look healthier, you're going to feel healthier, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor looks at you and he says, wow, you look fabulous. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. So let's get you started. Why don't you go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Enter in code Robert when you purchase your Field of Greens, your real organic superfood, or any of the other amazing products there at fieldofgreens.com, and save 15% off by using code Robert. And don't forget to use that code to make sure that you save. Fieldofgreens.com, code Robert. All right. And so let's go back over to the Twitter files. Now that we know that basically every single person on here was sort of selected for whatever reason by Mark Lindsay, and many of those people have no real connections or alliance with Russia at all, let's carry on. Taibbi says, a government official writing from a State Department email asks to, quote, delete 14 accounts that are engaged in legit speech for which no evidence is shown that they're Russian-controlled bots or anything? Yeah, a clear First Amendment violation issue. That's the government acting as a state actor, putting their disgusting boot on the necks of private citizens. Taibbi says, I noted before that there were many crazy requests in the Twitter records from officials wanting foes taken off Twitter, with Californian Adam Pencilneck Schiff and his effort to ban a reporter and to stop any and all search results about a staffer making Angus King's spreadsheet gambit look tame. This email came out Thursday, November 12, 2020, right after the election. It says, hi, so-and-so. I met with blank from PP and he flagged the attached analysis from the House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee. Schiff's office for your review related to harassment from QAnon conspirators against this staffer. Here are our thoughts. Will you please remove any of all of this stuff? Remove any and all content about Mr. Misko, including any quote retweets and other content, right? Suspend accounts of Greg Rubini and Paul Sperry. He says they're QAnon conspirators, right? This is from Adam Schiff's office. Suppress any and all search results. And they say, no, we don't do that. No, we don't do this. No, we don't actually do that either. And label and reduce visibility. We don't do that either. All of this coming from Pencilneck's Intelligence Select Committee. Insane that they would be censoring people that openly. Look at this email. We don't like Greg Rubini. We don't like Paul Sperry. Please nuke their accounts. And then when they didn't, the government got very upset about it. Taibbi says, the fact that mainstream news outlets ignored the Schiff story but howled about Trump and Tegan shows exactly what they're about. Responses like this are designed to keep blue-leaning audiences especially focused on moronic partisan spats, obscuring the bigger picture narratives. The real story, says Matt, emerging about the Twitter files is about the ballooning federal censorship bureaucracy that's not aimed at either the left or the right per se, but at the whole population of outsiders who are being systematically defined as threats. Yeah, the liberals are going to be in for a rude awakening when they realize that they are not in the in crowd anymore, right? Eventually, at some point, the state is going to need to stop all of the warring to protect the state, and so the utility of the black versus white versus brown versus Asian, all of the things, it's all going to not be useful, because then everybody's going to be demanding for an overthrow of the society, and the people in charge don't want that to happen. So it's going to be then about consolidating that power, and all of the people who thought that, this woke intersectionality was going to be the saving grace are going to be in for a rude awakening when that all changes, and they're asked to realign with statism. So in March, says Matt, we're going to start using the Twitter files to tell this larger story about how Americans turn their counterterrorism machinery against themselves. Yeah, we've got homegrown violent domestic terror extremism, all the different DVEs, HGVEs, and so on, to disastrous effect through the little-known agencies like the Global Engagement Center, which was another entity that Elon referenced. Until then, if you found yourself on that King list, please DM me or write in Racket News. He says, I'm on vacation next week. enjoy yourself, Matt. Take the week off. But we'll mock up Angus King's told Twitter I was suspicious shirts when I get back. Thanks to contributors like Schellenberger and Fang, of course. That is Matt Taibbi. Twitter files 16. And he said, if you need to contact him, that is the email, racketnews@protonmail.com. And so we'll, of course, continue to cover the Twitter files. We're still waiting for the Fauci files. We're looking for more. Of course, we'll continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video wherever it is you're watching it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for us on the show today. And we covered a lot of good ground. We hit the Twitter files. We learned a little bit about William Pope and his filings. We had Tucker Carlson news that he's getting his hands on. Some very interesting video files that we can't wait to see. And all of that will be a lot of fun to dig into. But I am trying to open up our comments section so that I can see the support that you sent in on this beautiful day. But my screen is not working for some reason. I really don't know why that would be. All right, so all right, I am clicking around on the screen here to get over to the appropriate screen, and now I have found it finally. Thank you. All right, it worked. Here, our first one is in the house from our friend named Michael Allen Hughes. Thank you, Michael Allen. He says, Rob could be the actor on Magnum PI. You know, Michael Allen Hughes, I think that's probably a very nice compliment, but I don't think I've ever seen Magnum PI. I don't think so. Is that the one with the guy with the mustache? Thank you, Michael Allen. I appreciate it. I'll have to look it up. The chat says, what? Phil James says, do you think it will expose the bomber? No, definitely not. No, because that was probably Jim, who works on the third floor at the FBI building. It was him. So they're not going to out him. They don't want us to know who that guy was. Burt Reynolds, Tom Selleck. Yeah, I don't know who that was. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it, but I'll have to look it up now. I'll have to take a look at it. No, I'm not sure we're ever going to get that bomber, that pipe bomber. You know, that guy who almost blew up the 2 buildings that never happened because everything went according to plan. They didn't need to use that. I don't think we'll ever learn from him. Michael Allen Hughes again. Thank you, Michael Allen. A couple today. I appreciate that. Says, the truth will set you free. The left hates the truth unless they can control it. Fact-checking Mockingbird Media controls the truth where allowed. Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I mean, you don't need to put people in physical prisons if you can put them in digital prisons and just control the narratives. It's like the allegory of the cave, Plato. You know, you just they're shining the shadows on the wall, and they know that we're sort of stuck watching it. But we're not going to allow them to continue to control the informational supply chains. In fact, part of what we're doing here, and all alternative media, is reinstituting, creating grooves for the new informational supply chains, new tributaries where this information can flow. And they can't control it anymore, and they're freaking out about it. They're going through a difficult time right now, as you can see. They're losing their minds over Twitter and Elon, and now Tucker's getting this access, and they're having a difficult time. Guy is here, says, isn't withholding this video evidence a Brady violation? It's a great question there, Guy. And this is an argument that defense attorneys make, but the government says no, because they say, well, so here's the thing. Brady, if you look the case up, it talks about, real exculpatory information. So like if the government knew that there was video footage. Okay, so like let's take the William Pope case as an example here, Guy. It's a great question. It's a little complicated, but let's take no problem on it. I just have to explain that because I'm about to go off on a tangent. So let's take the William Pope case for a minute and say, in his case, he's filing requests for discovery. They're saying you can't have access to all 41,000 hours, or he wants, 4.2 million documents or whatever the numbers are. They're saying if the Brady rule says if they had something in there that exonerated him, if they knew about it and they had it in there, or even if they didn't know about it, they've got a duty to go investigate it and find it and disclose it to him if it would exonerate him. So from their perspective, they're just going to turn around and say, okay, we checked. There's nothing in there that's going to exonerate him. There is nothing exculpatory. We've met our burden. We've done our duty. And so we've satisfied Brady. His argument is, yeah, but you didn't. Okay, your duty was to go through all of the other evidence and disclose this and disclose that and disclose this other thing. And so the court's going to say, well, that is asking too much of them, because now that makes them kind of a defense lawyer. So the judge will draw the line typically at that. And then now it becomes an argument about, well, can the defense even have access to those things? So in my DUI case, oftentimes the court says, no, you don't get access to the other machine, or you don't get access to the crime lab, this portion of what they did, because it's not relevant to your hula hoop. It's too big. To use Kamala's Venn diagrams, it's too far outside of the lines. It doesn't apply. But in this case, right, they're going to say they met their Brady obligations. He's going to say, I want to go investigate, because essentially, if he finds anything in this other footage, his argument is not going to be that there was a Brady violation. It's going to be a defense, right? It's going to be sort of like an affirmative defense, like, yes, I was in there, but entrapment. So he'll admit to the conduct, but then he'll say I was entrapped into doing it, and the government did the entrapping. So it's kind of a different, right? Both things might lead to a not guilty verdict or to a reduction in a penalty, in like a plea deal. However, there'll be different reasons. So the outcome would be the same, but the mechanism would be a little bit different. It's a great question. Love the question. And I think that discovery is a huge issue in this case. If I was representing somebody in a J6 case, I would be extremely frustrated to not have access to all of that. So now that Kevin McCarthy just handed it over, is going to be like, amazing. It's like a hitting the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. Great question, Guy. Thank you. Patrick Vanderlyn says, James O'Keefe quit Project Veritas after being removed as a board member and CEO by the board members. Thank you for reminding me about this, Patrick Vanderlyn. So I did listen to the whole, there's a Muse on Twitter. Shout out to a Muse on Twitter. Posted the full video from James O'Keefe. My understanding it is the full thing, about 45 minutes or so long. I watched the full thing. I felt heartbroken for James. I mean, I really felt like I grew up with James. I was watching him, when he was first getting started, and he's been inspirational in many ways to what we do here. Oftentimes I'll think, I can't talk about that, or I can't say that thing. And I go, well, what did Project Well, they're out there doing this, that, and the other thing. They're out there just extremely aggressively pushing for what they believe in, fighting. And so it felt like the end of an era, and I'm very sad about it. I don't know what Project Veritas is now. I think that, whatever James decides to do, he's going to have a home run. He'll be able to rebuild quickly and I think establish a foothold and grow rapidly. But it's a heartbreaking thing. It's a shocking thing. And as somebody who sort of wants to be more in this space and is building in this space, it was a very interesting thing to see how they did it and how sort of cold-hearted they did it. He explained it in his statement. And of course, there's two sides to every story, but in his statement, he said that basically they were pulling him out of the position while he was landing on a plane. Like, it all happened he was in the air, and they were just making all of these changes, and they just pulled it out right from under him. And so it felt pretty disgusting the way he described it. It felt pretty cowardly, and I don't know why anybody would even want to associate with an entity that operates that way at all. So I don't know what they did. I don't know what benefit they get from that, or how Project Veritas, the company, moves on from there, but it's the end of an era. With Project Veritas, it's the beginning of a whole new timeline. And I think, sometimes these things offer opportunities for, it's almost like creative destruction in a way. James O'Keefe was a part of a big organization. I'm sure he had to give up a lot of control to make it so big and to get it to that size. And so he may not need all of that. He might have more leverage. He might have more power. He might have more freedom to say the things he wants to say. And so this might be sort of a great opportunity for him. But still, it's a sad thing. He was there for 13 years, man. Yikes. And so, it's a hard thing to do. So shout out to James O'Keefe and his team over there, everybody who's going through it. We'll continue to follow along. K Bean is here. Says 7 years sheriff's deputy. I say anyone can go to jail, anyone. What's your opinion, Rob? I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. You know, there's the quote, I forget who said it. Several of you have brought it up here many times. It's, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. You can just sort of find a reason to prosecute anybody for anything. I've had this happen to me. I mean, I've had cops pull me over for license plate lights. I've seen it hundreds of times in people I've represented. Wide right turns on an afternoon. If you make a wide right turn, okay, so let's say you make a turn into from a 3-lane road into another 3-lane road, and you're in the right-hand lane to make your right-hand turn. Well, if you don't turn into the immediate right lane, in Arizona, that's technically illegal. You know that. You can be pulled over for that. Of course, it happens about a gajillion times every day. Nobody does anything about it. Nobody cares. If you turn immediately into the first lane, you're good. Turn immediately into the second lane, illegal. However, if that's done 2 in the morning and you're leaving a bar, well, you're going to get pulled over for that and you're going to get hit with the DUI, right? And so that's just one example of many. And they just make up reasons, also, you know, in my opinion, all the time. And they'll often come up with 2 reasons so that if a defense attorney can beat the one, they'll have another one. So they'll say, oh, it was a wide right turn and weaving within the lane. You go, no, it wasn't. You made that up. But they just made it up so that if you could show that it wasn't in fact a wide right turn, that it was still weaving within the lane. Or if it wasn't weaving within the lane, then it was the wide right turn. So they just stack them up. You can charge anybody with anything. And it's a scary thing. You know, we've covered cases here. I mean, yeah, it's a scary thing. And you can see what happens when there's like the mob also becomes fomented, especially in some of these public interest cases, K-Bean. Think about this too. Think about, K-Bean, the people who don't have public interest behind them, the people who don't get any eyeballs at all. And they were just put through the grinder of the justice system, just forgotten about. Think about how many thousands of or hundreds of thousands of people, you know, are sort of in that current position. Awful. Anyway, it's good to see you there, K-Bean. Thanks for the nice comment and the support. Fred Pedamonte is here. He says, sorry, Johnny and me are broke. That's okay, Fred. And thanks for coming out of pocket to let me know. I mean, that's an expensive message to send. Sorry, Johnny and me are broke. Well, sorry. That's all right. Yeah, Johnny, I mean, he probably spent it all on what, like uranium, plutonium, chimeras, all sorts of stuff. I don't know. It's madness over there at the Fred Pedamonte and Johnny household. But thank you, Fred, for letting me know. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who is joining us. Thank you to all of our YouTube friends. Grateful for you over there. And thankful to our Rumble friends. And so we're chatting over there. I see we got a good Rumble crew over there, everybody. Shout out to our Rumble friends. We got IR5 is in the house. He says, will the disclosure make any difference? My sense is that, oh, here it is. Says that my sense is DC district will convict any conservative and acquit any liberal. Yeah, this is a great question. 1R5. And I think that that's generally the case, right? I don't think that it's going to result in sudden acquittals or anything like that. Like, I really don't think a judge is going to turn around and say, wow, it kind of does. I can't imagine any judge in DC or really any judge anywhere turns around and says, yeah, it kind of does feel like the FBI was involved in this. And maybe we should clarify it at all. But I do think the video is consequential for, well, the court of public opinion. And if the court of public opinion shifts and some of these cases mature, you know, like the DOJ is not going to be under Democrat control forever, right? Like there'll be a Republican in there. It could be like a Trump DOJ or it could be a DeSantis DOJ. And so all of this stuff, you know, I feel horrible for the J6ers who have to like wait until that happens. Hopefully it happens very soon. But this stuff is, you know, this is a long haul, man. These J6 cases, it's going to be a long haul and they're going to try to milk them for as long as they can. So I'm not sure that it changes anything, you know, or acquits anybody or results in anything immediately, but I do think it's very important for the long-term clarity on the case. Like, we want to get to the truth on these cases, regardless of how long it takes. And it's taken a lot longer than I would prefer, but the Republicans are in charge and it looks like we are making some progress. And so those were some friends over on Rumble, and we appreciate all of our Rumble friends over there. And let's see who else was in the chat over in the Rumble chat. Where did it go? There it is. We got Surf Wyoming's in the house. We got Odessia's over there. Jay Cutbirth's over there. We were having audio issues on locals, so I was on both. Uh-oh, really? Artie's over there. CV Media, Dog Digger, Artie Parks. We got 1J9's in the house. Peter Tagg's in the house. Donut Mind Me. Odessia's chatting away. It's good to see everybody over there. Over on the Rumbles. And we also have our friends on Twitter. We love to support the free speech platforms. And of course, if you're not following us on Rumble or on Twitter, it's only a matter of time until we get another strike or another something on YouTube. Knock on wood. Hopefully not, but you know how it is over there. Let's see what else is going on over on Twitter. We have some very interesting. Let's see how many people are on Twitter right now. Oh my gosh, we got 6 people. Out of control, man. Out of control. So, of course, you can follow us over at Rob Govea, ESQ. And who else is in the chat? We've got FBI at J6 are pretty much this obvious now. This is from our friend at Sleepy Dog Lee. Paul Mino is on Twitter. And he said the FBI at the J6 are pretty much this obvious now. You see that? You see that little rooster? It's not a flamingo. It's a rooster. Thank you, Paul. James Pepper is here. Says the hills are closed. What's that one here? The hills are closed. From James Pepper. I think this is from The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. Is that the one? From James Pepper. Joe Biden's worried about being invaded from James Pepper. Goodyear blimp is here from James Pepper, which is a good one. Goodyear was pretty creative today, flying over the Daytona. That's hilarious. Don't shoot. That's hilarious. That's too big. They let those fly over the country. They only shoot down little Timmy's weather balloons that are $12 at hobby shops. That's like a big one. So they would let that one go over the nuclear bases and so on. Yeah, Donna's in the house sharing a picture of J6er who's been incarcerated. Also sharing another image of this officer pulling people in, right? This guy just pulling people in. Get in here, or whoever that is, whether it's an officer or not, don't know. And he says, you were pushing us in, man. You were pushing us in. Why were you pushing us in? A lot of questions over this. CA Humans in the house. Norman's over there, says, great stream. Becky's, what's up, Becky? Kelly says, William Pope is my hero. Great work in filing for access to discovery. Give this guy a law degree. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great filing. Very good filing. We've read through several pro pers filings here, and it was at the top of the heap. I thought it was very good. All right. And so those are our friends over on Twitter. And of course, if you're not following us over on Twitter, you can do that at Rob Govea ESQ and follow everybody else over there, all of the other watchers, and get connected to the community there. But that, my friends, is it for us. We are going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party, and we would love to see you over there. It is right here on your screen. We have member-only streams, so if you join us over on YouTube or on watchingthewatchers.locals.com, we do headlines in the mornings, and we just talk about, what's going on in the day, figure out what's percolating in the news. They're fun. Come check us out. A little bit more casual. And we're also working on some other cool stuff, including a live chat, a calendar, a docket, some personal development like libraries, all sorts of cool stuff on a website. And if you join on Locals now, you get grandfathered into that if you want it. So check it out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, don't forget to get your greens and be extra healthy. It's important to be energized and vibrant and well, so be sure to go to fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% off with code Robert. Your real organic superfood will make you feel great. Fruits and vegetables every day. We all need it. Also want to shout out my former law firm. Of course, I'm no longer there, but they are doing great work still, even better work now. And they're helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. You can check them out at rrlawaz.com. Also want to shout out our mods and meme smiths on the day. Shout out to Vienticus Prime. He's on game night tonight, but we also had K Bean in the house, our friend Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, also in the chat, along with our friend at Geomancy Games. You can subscribe to him on YouTube. We heard from our friend Paul at Sleepy Dog Lee over on Twitter, one of our meme smiths, along with Geegum Geegum and Locals, another one of our outstanding meme smiths. And we're grateful for everybody who makes the show possible. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and I'd love to see you there. But if not, my friends, we will be back here tomorrow to do it all again. Side note, tomorrow is going to be 1 hour early on the show. We're going to be 1 hour early on the show because of a night event that I have to attend to. And so we'll be 1 hour early tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Yes. Now, I almost missed this one, but shout out to our friend Tara Raynar, who shared this one on YouTube. Says James O'Keefe will triumph. The board, however, has ensured the end for PV. I think that was the plan. He exposes their bankrollers. Yeah, it's weird. You know, the Pfizer story breaks, and then all of a sudden, where'd James O'Keefe go? It's weird, isn't it? You know, he can talk about everything. He's covered basically everything, right? But you hit Pfizer, gone. Take the whole company away. It's amazing. He exposes their bankrollers. Happy Press Day to President Trump from Canada. Enjoy the rest of your day all. Prayers for the J6ers. Great comment from Tara. And I appreciate that, Tara. Thank you for the nice dono and for the great comment. I agree. I think the James is going to be just fine. It's going to take some time to rebuild. You know, it's a big organization, and he's probably going to have to do some soul searching and figure out all that stuff. He's going through a transition. I know what that feels like. Not quite like that. He's going through a real, serious, not amicable transition. Mine was very amicable, but we'll keep following, of course. And I appreciate everybody who supported the show here today. Of course, your support means more than ever now, more than ever, and I'm grateful for it. But we are done here. We will come back tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.